okay, so I'm going down to Texas, and my dad just got Starlink, and he's in Central Texas, so he's in like the best effort zone, which I believe means that you can get a Starlink terminal and you can access the network, but you'll be deprioritized compared to other users. But we're still gonna install it and set it up and just kind of see how it works and have some fun with it. That is not scientifically accurate, by the way. Guess we can get rid of this. Oh, thanks. Can you grab that? Are those all the instructions you get? Do not touch. So I assume that means this pivots automatically. Plug into router, plug into wall, download app. Okay, well that's it.
Yep, pretty easy. Oh, USB.
Okay, you know how to do it?
Yep.
Instructions clear.
Run wire.
What is that, the modem?
Slash router.
What's on the front?
It looks like planets. It looks like,
Ooh!
I think that's Earth and that's our satellite.
We own a satellite.
Yep.
Actually, I think, I go back. I have a shirt like this.
Yeah.
I think this is the Mars free return trajectory.
Oh, really?
So like that's the transfer between Earth and Mars.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of cool.
That is cool.
It's like a little Easter egg. Okay, it's all we got in the box. We got the modem router, no instructions, and the terminal. Before we route the cables through the attic and the walls and everything, we wanted to just set it up and test it. So that white dish is the current internet?
Yeah. That big bucket-looking thing, that's the old LTE, which is not active anymore.
Is that through like Verizon?
Yeah.
Okay. This dish right here is pointing...
The Wildcat. Way over there, power Wildcat.
Ah, cool. So this is the Wildcat tower, and see those satellite dishes? Those are the dishes that are pointed to our house over there that give us internet. So here out on the ranch, at first, a few years ago, we had satellite internet, and that was maybe 3 or 4 megabits per second, and pretty slow, like pretty high latency. And then we tried that LTE transmitter receiver thing, and that still wasn't great. So then we tried, I guess, wireless internet, where we have this dish pointed at a tower like several miles away. And that tower acts as like a hub for, you know, several residents in the area. That one's maybe like 15 megabits per second, but still not super reliable. It almost looks like these connectors are waterproof, like they have this like rubber around it. It moved! Oh, it does have 2 axes.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Well, now what? So now it has moved and it is connected. Sweet. So apparently after you plug it in, the first mode is just like satellite searching orientation, and that's when it's flat. And once it's connected to the network, then it'll pivot to its current optimal position, I guess. Okay, I guess we just open up the app and search for Wi-Fi. What's the name? There's nothing else out here. Is it Stinky? What is Stinky? Is that Starlink? Okay, seems to be working pretty well. So now we're gonna build a mount for it, put it on the roof, reroute the cables, do the initial setup again. I would imagine it has to do its whole reorienting process if it's ever moved, but we'll see. Okay, setting up with the app was super easy, but it got stuck in step 3 when we were trying to use the iPhone app, and step 3 was like kind of configuring the connection, and it set up the network fine, and we could use it to access internet and everything like that. We just couldn't get past that step and like do any of the native in-app speed tests or obstruction and visibility tests or any of the other stuff that the app has. So when I downloaded the app on my Pixel, it worked totally fine. And then my dad had to uninstall and reinstall it on his iPhone, and then it started working. Okay, we're going to use the hardware from the LTE transmitter receiver thing to manufacture our own Starlink terminal mounts for the roof. Okay, so we're thinking about using this base to mount the Starlink terminal, and we're kind of worried about the roof obstruction and then also this TV antenna right here. So we're thinking we're gonna move it up to the eave and manufacture some kind of base for the terminal, because the terminal is a lot bigger than this receiver. What are we working with? I like your 80s music. It's pretty good for one eye. To be fair, he got retinal reattachment surgery like 2 weeks ago. Whoa. Don't look the other way. Whoa. This is where I mount the laser.
Space laser. The dogs are supervisors.
So the end of this cable is actually pretty big. We had to make a 1 1/4 inch hole. Or is it 1 1/2 inch?
I think it is 1 1/4.
1 1/4, just to fit that through.
Oh, and the house is 2 inch. Sorry. Oh, cool. Do we leave the light on?
Hello? Yes.
What about the other one?
Yeah. Yay! We drilled a hole into the house, ran the cable through, and then put this box on and siliconed it and screwed it in to make it watertight. So far, that is it so far. Whoops. Yay! Whew. It's all here. It's kind of a large hole compared to these guys. Hey, you want to help me install Starlink? It'll be fun. Why don't you crawl through the attic? Okay, we are now proceeding to run the cables through the attic and the wall with some fish tape. There sure are a lot of wires for a wireless internet. Jeez. Radio check.
Copy.
Cool. So traditional satellite internet uses satellites in geosynchronous orbit, and orbits are weird. So the closer a satellite is to the Earth, the faster it has to travel to stay in orbit. So the orbital period of a geosynchronous satellite, which is about 22,000-ish miles away, exactly lines up with the rotational period of the Earth. So a satellite in geosynchronous orbit is actually moving, it's orbiting the Earth, but that movement relative to the ground is negligible. So that's how you can have a satellite dish, like the one over there, pointed at a fixed point in the sky at a satellite, even though the satellite is technically orbiting the Earth. So satellites or other objects in orbit are technically in a constant state of free fall, but they are traveling so fast horizontally that they never fall to the Earth, they fall around the Earth. Let's see, this is shiny, I think this will work. Okay, say you have a flat surface and you shoot a bullet like this, right? It's gonna eventually land right here. Okay, so say instead of a flat surface, you have a curved surface like this. And say you shoot the bullet again at the same angle, it's gonna land right here. But if you notice, it landed further away than it did when the surface was flat. So say this is the Earth, which is curved. If you were to shoot this bullet at a high enough velocity, its arc will match the curvature of the Earth, and it'll just go around and come back to where it started. And this velocity, where the arc matches the curvature of the Earth, is orbital velocity at low Earth orbit, so about 17,500 miles an hour. So, again, if this is the Earth, E for Earth, and you shoot something going this way fast enough, it's falling towards the Earth. So it's constantly being pulled this direction. However, it's just going so fast horizontally, it never hits the ground. And that is what you call an orbit. Yeah, space! So really the only reason a rocket goes up is so it gets out the atmosphere. And then it does a roll or a pitch maneuver, and then gets tons of horizontal velocity. And just really, you just have to be a few hundred kilometers above the ground for the atmospheric drag to be low enough to keep up that 17,500 mile an hour velocity, at least for a few months until your orbit decays. So a satellite closer to the Earth has to travel faster in order to stay in orbit, and satellites up in geosynchronous orbit, they travel slower. It's kind of like if a skydiver drops an object right next to them and it falls at the same speed. They're both in free fall. However, relative to the skydiver, the object isn't moving. Similar to how a person on the ground and a satellite in geosynchronous orbit are both moving, but relative to one another, they're not. So the cool thing about Starlink is the satellites are only a few hundred miles above the Earth's surface instead of 22,000. Okay, well, why is that important? Well, first, it's important because it's just interesting and cool. But second, that's why the design of the Starlink antenna is the way it is. It shows you how impressive having a internet constellation in low Earth orbit is, and being able to interface with that with low latency and low interruptions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that the Starlink terminals use a phased array antenna. And I've been noticing that the antenna doesn't really move, which makes sense if it's phased array. And after the terminal had positioned itself when we first set it up, it hasn't moved after that. A phased array antenna can steer the transmission beam without moving any mechanical components. So it can switch between satellites insanely quickly. And I guess that's what you need when you have a constellation of several thousand satellites in low Earth orbit, constantly moving at high velocity. Unlike in GEO, where you can just have a dish that just stares at one spot. So a normal antenna may just like transmit like this, boop, to a satellite or something. But a phased array antenna has tons and tons of different transmitters, and so it can transmit straight up, and just a fraction of a second later, it can change the beam to say go this way. If it alters the timing of each one of these transmitters, and then this one's a little later, 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 it creates an interference pattern which basically digitally steers the beam to go this direction without any mechanical components. And then it can change the timing and then steer it this way or steer it this way or whatever. So it's very fast. There's the terminal, and no obstructions except for maybe this tree right here, which is actually indicated on the app. So I also noticed the app has some pretty cool stuff. First, it has like an obstruction visibility, I don't know, tester or like viewer or something like that. And after your Starlink terminal has been set up for like 4 or 5 hours, it will show you a map, like a sky map of obstructions. So if there's a tree limb or something like that, it'll like show that area red, which is kind of cool. And then it also has this feature where you can like walk around your house and it'll make a little map of your house and like where the signal, like the connection to the router is good or poor. It uses your camera, and it didn't really like maintain proper orientation when I was using it, so it was kind of weird. And as I got further away, the signal got worse, and I was like, well, yeah, duh. Like I could figure that out. So I don't know. It was cool. We noticed the internet speed was quite variable. Sometimes it'd be at like 4 megs, and then some would be like 40, 50, and then sometimes it'd be like 150 or 200. But that makes sense being in the best effort zone. I assume that when we're in like the full service area, that will improve, and we won't be deprioritized when compared to other people, because I imagine that our speed is getting slowed down because we're lower priority. But hopefully from this point it'll just keep getting better. And I have a few speed tests that I screen recorded here.